Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the GFS. Then we'll have a look at the zonal mean winds, the NAO, the AO. Then we'll go back to the operational runs, have a look at the GEM, the ECMWF, and we'll finish up with the ECMWF and GFS Ensembles, and then the UKMO 5-day precipitation and temperature. Now we've been in a bit of a rut recently with a lot of high pressure around, as most of you would have known looking out outside. We've had some sunny days, some gloomy days, some colder days, and some milder days, especially further northwards. But as we've been seeing over the last few days, that's all going to be changing. We're going to be seeing a much more mobile sort of weather systems moving in off the Atlantic. It could be milder at times, but it also could be colder as well. There are signals that we could be seeing something quite cold, especially during early to middle of February. The blocking patterns look like they may be returning. It is very uncertain at this stage. So as we'll go through the runs today, you'll be able to see that none of them really agree with each other, except that we're going into a much more mobile sort of pattern. But there are, of course, some extremely cold runs and some extremely westerly, milder runs, as we will see. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure to like and subscribe. And remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. Also do check out channel membership, of course, that link is in the description as well. So do run through the latest GFS. You can see high pressure is over the top of the UK at the moment. Dry, but it's been pretty gloomy around the UK with a lot more track cloud, as we do have weaker weather fronts trying to push in from the north, getting sort of fizzled out by the higher pressure, but that cloud is still sticking around, even though there is limited rainfall coming out of it. But you can see these purples up towards northern Canada, Greenland, and that's the tropospheric polar vortex really getting its act together, really powering up, and it's going to be sending weather systems towards the UK, trying to break down this high pressure. And over the next 5 days or so, it's going to be hitting these low pressures into the higher pressure over the top of the UK, and it's going to be having a go at breaking it down. And it does look like by the middle of next week, by maybe Wednesday, Thursday time, it will break down the higher pressure, and we will see low pressure return for many. Now, if we do run through this latest GFS run, you can see that high pressure hanging on, getting a little bit of reinforcements actually from the Atlantic. And you can see by Thursday, low pressure system starting to push through, especially in the north, bringing a bit of a weather system. High pressure tries to sort of take back control for another low pressure system moving. And again, we see a bit of a northerly wind, so we could be seeing some colder air pushing in around day 10. And this is where the big uncertainty comes, because it looks like around day 10 we're going to be seeing these big lows coming out of northeast Canada. We're seeing this high pressure trying to push northwards. But it's sort of the orientation of these high pressure, low pressure systems will decide where we see the cold. Because I'd like to show the 6Z run from last night, which was very, very interesting indeed. Now, on this run, we do try to build a Scandinavian high, actually, seeing diving lows. This run doesn't specifically go very cold, but it goes for a pattern that would more than likely eventually pull off some cold weather, because we've got high pressure towards Svalbard, up towards Scandinavia, trying to push weather systems in from the east, but we also have the Atlantic, which is being driven southwards with these lows going down towards Portugal. And if we do finish the run, a real peculiar system with high pressure, real big blocking over the Arctic, massive amount of blocking, big negative AO, and you'd suspect if this continued for another week or so, we would probably go very cold. Negative AO does not guarantee colder patterns, but it does make them probably, I'd say, more than 50-50 opportunity of seeing at least some moderate cold weather with a negative AO. So it's very likely we'd be going colder. If you look at the 850 HPA temperatures, you can see cold air waiting in the wings just towards Scandinavia, and that Atlantic is getting blocked off by these high pressure systems. Now, I did want to show you the 6Z run from last night. So if we go to the 6Z run, now you can see right at the end of the run, we do see high pressure pushing up towards Scandinavia. We're looking, of course, at the Northern Hemisphere view, but if we go to the European view, you can see that high pressure ridging up towards Iceland. That ridge is a bit further westwards, so we're actually seeing bitterly cold northerly winds. If we do run it back a bit further, you actually see, even right day 10, we're starting to pull in bitterly cold air. It does get a brief bit of milder sector before we see another northerly wind, and we go into bitterly cold easterly winds to end the run. Real cold, -10 line pushing in, and that would be a real sustained cold spell. Because I did say there's a brief milder sector there, and early February, but we're actually in much colder weather all the way from the start of February. So the GFS 6Z run from last night is showing pretty much a 7-day sort of cold spell. And I'm not saying this is going to happen, but these are the scenarios we could be seeing. It's very much up in the air. It all depends on whether we see this AO or not, so this negative AO or not, and how powerful the jet stream does get, how much of that connection do we see from the stratosphere to the troposphere. And that's why it's good to have a look at the zonal mean winds, the NAO and the AO. So we start with the NAO. You can see it is positive, and it's going to remain, well, weakly positive, let's just say, over the next couple of weeks, around 1. Now, that's going to mean the Atlantic is going to be much more mobile. Low pressure generally in the North Atlantic trying to push in. Now, that does mean that a sort of a North Atlantic ridge out towards just over the top of the UK becomes quite unlikely in the shorter term, or at least it holding on because the NAO is more flat. So we're not going to be seeing any massive North Atlantic blocking, but we could be seeing that block move through the North Atlantic towards the Arctic. And if we do have a look at the Arctic oscillation, we're seeing again this signal that for early February, there's about a 50-50 split in the ensemble members. Some staying positive, quite moderately to even quite highly positive on some of the runs, but others going very, very negative. It's about a 50-50 split for early February. And of course, the operational run from 6Z last night, and even the 6Z run for this morning, you can see would have been a big negative AO pattern with a lot of blocking over the Arctic, with bitterly cold air spreading into the northern latitudes, mid latitudes, potentially coming towards the UK. But you can see with this 50-50 split, it's not guaranteed, and that's why we're seeing a lot of wacky runs at the moment. Suddenly, the ensembles in the GFS run going bitterly cold, we're thinking cold spell coming, and then suddenly they revert milder again before they go colder again. So I wouldn't look at any of these charts too literally at this stage, and a lot of charts I'm seeing on Twitter are very much overhyping or downplaying this. Some people are saying it's going to be a massive westerly fest, others saying it's going to be blocked and cold, and that's because these models are pumping out these different scenarios because the general theme is not decided for early February at this stage, and that's well reflected on the zonal mean winds, because I think a lot of this is down to how the tropospheric polar vortex connects to the stratospheric polar vortex. On the left, you can see the raw winds, so these are the actual winds from 70 meters per second all down to minus 24 meters per second. You can see these on the surface. Of course, those westerly winds are going to be weaker. And you see in the longer term, even towards the first week of February, we actually see a bit of a weakening in those westerly winds, more of these blues and sort of lighter greens coming in, showing a reduction in the westerly flow. But you can see right up in the stratosphere, big dark reds, and on the right you can see the anomalies. So red for the anomalies is stronger than average zonal mean winds, so that's westerly winds, and blues are less than average, so not quite as strong as we would tend to see this time of year. You can see right in the stratosphere, upper levels of the atmosphere, really strong. It's strong at the moment. It's going to get even stronger, 30 to 35 meters per second anomalies in the stratosphere. But you can see the surface, potentially towards the first week of February, we actually see negative anomalies, so reduction in the westerly winds at the surface. There is an increase towards the end of January, and that's why there's definitely going to be a lot more mobility, potentially westerly winds for a good few days towards the end of this month, start of February. But we're seeing this continued signal, as we saw with the operational run, showing blocking over the Arctic, and of course on here, we're seeing the potential for the stratospheric polar vortex to disconnect again to the tropospheric polar vortex, because a lot of people thought it was connecting, as we saw these reds slowly move through the atmosphere with positive anomalies towards the surface, but we're seeing it's not lasting particularly long and it's not getting particularly strong. Big disconnect between the atmosphere here, which could play into our hands, giving us potentially some colder weather for the start of February. Now, if we do have a look at the GM run, see what that does show, you can see again very similar over the next few days with high pressure controlling. Then we see sort of transient northerly winds, and right towards day 10, we do see a bit of a westerly scenario. No real signs of any massive northern blocking. If we have a look at the northern hemisphere, we do see a bit of high pressure trying to push into the Arctic. Again, it could form some northern blocking, as again this run is only going out to day 10, which is at this stage the first couple of days of February, and of course some of this blocking we're not looking at until maybe 5th to 10th of February, that sort of time frame. So wouldn't expect it to see massive blocking at day 10 on the GM run, but we are seeing that general westerly flow, cold and milder sectors come into plenty. You can see again in around sort of 8-9 days time, colder sector could be some wintry showers with that before big milder sector pushes through. So there is going to be a lot of flip-flopping and a lot of mobility in the jet stream over the next week or two, especially after the high pressure breaks down this week. Now if we do look at the ECMWF run, see how that does compare. Again, high pressure over at the moment, and then we see low pressure trying to push through brief northerly flows, and very similar to the GM run at the end with westerly flow, sort of flipping between colder and mild sectors. Colder sector in Eastern Europe, mild sector over the UK, and another colder sector out in the North Atlantic. And again, if we have a look at the Northern Hemisphere, you can see blocking trying to push up into the Arctic, but again, we're not in the right time frame to sort of be seeing that. But it is still interesting, still showing a lot more mobility, and again, it is that longer term, that day 10 to day 14, where we're seeing the potential for some colder weather, some blocking, potentially some very cold northerly or northwesterly flows appearing. But at this stage, there is so much uncertainty there that I don't want to call anything at this stage. Just looking a lot more mobile, and the potential for colder and milder, much milder weather does appear for early February, because of course we can see southwesterly winds, the same we could see northerly winds. That's how uncertain the next couple of weeks is, because again, as I said, all depends on how the jet stream, how strong the jet stream is, and whether we see these blocking patterns prevail. Now, if we do have a look at the ECMWF Ensembles, which shows this really, really well, the anomaly charts. Now, if we do go out to day 10, where it is pretty certain at this stage, you can see the sort of flip-flopping between milder and colder sectors with high pressure trying to reach northwards, these lobes of red, but then we see the purples trying to flatten it. You can see the different scenarios, some showing a bit of a northerly flow, others showing a bit of a westerly or southwesterly flow. And if we do continue beyond that, all the way out to 300 hours, we start to see a little bit of a difference, because this is where the high pressure could start to penetrate the Arctic. We could start to see that negative AO. You can see 15 have just a westerly flow, but high pressure building towards northeast Canada, and that would set up more of a northwesterly wind. Would be chilly, but not a locked-in cold spell, not a typical bitterly cold spell, but it would probably be cold enough for snow potentially in the north. 13 with high pressure ridging up over the top of the UK could be really mild with the southwesterly wind, but at the same time, if it gets north enough, it then could sort of backtrack and we start to see easterly winds. So we could see a bit of a warm air advection where warm air is pumped further northwards over the UK, but getting towards the Arctic, Scandinavia, and that could go colder. But again, it's sort of in between, it's difficult to say. Another 11 just show flat westerlies including control run. Another 8 show westerly winds, but again, higher pressure, low pressure either side, so milder, colder sectors with a bit more of an amplified jet stream. I suspect this would be really evolving, but again, a more active jet stream. And another 4 with high pressure over the top to the North UK, bitterly cold northeasterly winds. Now, if we go out all the way to 360 hours, we see similar sort of scenarios. 15 with a mid-Atlantic ridge towards Greenland, cold northerly wind. Again, would be difficult to say how sustained this will be. All depends on how much blocking we see in the Arctic. Another 13 have a westerly wind. That would be pretty mild. Could be colder sectors within that, but I'm not expecting anything too great with that. Could be quite stormy as well. Another 11 have high pressure over the top of the UK, something similar to what we have now with the jet stream pushed much further northwards. 8 with high pressure up towards Scandinavia, low pressure trying to come in off the Atlantic. Could be sort of a battleground scenario between milder area off the Atlantic, colder area from the east. Another 4 have big blocking towards Scandinavia. That could be setting up quite a cold spell of weather with an easterly wind. So you can see by all these ensemble members, there's none that's going, or at least not many, that's going really, really cold in the next 7 to 10 days, maybe even to 14 days. But there's a lot of these runs that are starting to show hints of higher pressure, trying to get into positions where it could bring colder weather towards the middle third of February. So at this stage, if you're looking for colder weather, I'd say there's potential in the first 10 days of February. It might not come off, but there is potential. But I would say probably between the 10th and the 20th of February is where we could start to see these blocking patterns really take over. But again, we'll have to see exactly how it does play out. A lot of uncertainty out there at this stage. Now, if we do have a look at the GFS Ensembles out to the 7th of, or 8th of February, you can see a lot of up and down with the temperatures. It's going to be pretty mild over the next week or so before we see a real cold sector move into the 31st of January. But as I'll show you in a minute, why we have so much uncertainty, because this colder sector wasn't there on the previous run, on the previous ensemble run. So it's very uncertain. I keep saying it's very uncertain because it is. There is so much flip-flopping between the models. Some showing real mild runs, some showing real cold, but there was a colder trend on the 6Z ensembles in around the 31st of January, before it turns briefly milder, and then we see generally around average, but with some going really cold, some going real mild. Big increase in precipitation, at least compared to what we have now. So definitely just like we'll be seeing rain return for all, probably by the end of this working week. But yeah, looking pretty chilly at times, but milder at times as well. But as I said, if we go back to the midnight run, around the 31st of January, it's milder than average. Very few going much colder. So there's been a colder trend on the 6Z run. But as I said, if we go back to the 6Z run last night, we're seeing a very cold trend in the longer term. So there's so much is changing between these ensemble runs every 6 hours. So don't take these too literally. The trend is for mobile weather patterns over the next 7 to 10 days. There's going to be milder. There's going to be much colder sectors around. There's going to be potential for some wintry showers in the north. There could be stormy weather around as well, but we won't know about that probably until sort of the 5-day time frame once these low pressure systems really do get resolved. But in the longer term, there is a trend for more colder blocked patterns. But there's nothing more than a trend at this stage, simply because we're not seeing massive amount of consistency, as you can see by these ensemble runs. Now, if we do finish up, have a look at the UKMO 5-day precipitation and temperature. Not much has changed really from yesterday. We could start to be a bit more mobile pattern towards day 5, as that might be getting into the time we see low pressure push through. But you can see today, a few showers in the north, but nothing too crazy. Those showers will push southwards over the course of this evening into early hours of tomorrow, but nothing really too crazy across northern Scotland. Bit of showers and rain over the higher ground. A lot of cloud around, of course. But by Tuesday afternoon, we start to see rain push into the north, could spread southwards, but not making too many inroads before Wednesday. We start to see a proper weather front, quite an active weather front push through in the north, moves southwards but does degrade quite significantly before Thursday. We see a very showery outlook across the north and the northwest before we see high pressure try and reach back over for Friday. So much more in the name of showers moving through later this week, Thursday, Friday time, especially for the northwards, and they could be wintry at times. Now, if we do have a look at max temperatures early this morning, a frost for a few areas, but where sort of cloud linger, temperatures stayed around 3 to 5 degrees. Of course, this afternoon, temperatures maybe 6 to 8 degrees, so around average, really. Tonight, frost maybe in the west, but again, all depends on cloud amounts. It does look like it will be quite cloudy around. Monday afternoon, 3, 4, 5 degrees for the high, so still quite chilly, especially in the south. And overnight Monday, again, could be a frost in the west and potentially down in the south and the east as well. By Tuesday afternoon, really cold. Looks around 1 to 3 degrees. I don't know exactly what's causing this. I think it must just be the inversion taking place over again, because there's no massive colder sectors coming in. But again, it's going to be fog and cloud keeping those temperatures down, but 1, 2, 3 degrees potentially across central southern England, the coldest areas in the country, which is very unusual for the end of January. You'd expect it to be over the Scottish Highlands, where temperatures generally are around freezing this time of year. Now, Tuesday night, Wednesday again, potentially a bit of a frost for Wednesday, around 7, 8 degrees, with temperatures slowly rising. By Thursday, once again, 9, 10 degrees in the south, but a colder sectors moving into the north. As I said, very mobile. It's going to be a lot of milder and colder sectors in the north, only freezing for many. By Friday night, frost widely across the north, around 3 or 4 degrees in the south. But this colder sector will move through swiftly, and by Saturday, we'll be in a milder sector again. So there's going to be a lot of up and downs over the next week to 2 weeks. So really need to keep an eye on the forecast. Some days are going to be 3 or 4 degrees with winter showers. Other days are going to be 8 or 9 degrees with cloud and strong westerly winds. So be a lot of change over the next week or two, a big change from the lot of stagnant high pressure we've had around at the moment. But I think a lot of people will be enjoying a bit more of a change with the weather, and of course this change with more mobility, potentially some blocking towards February, could bring us some cold weather. The highest chance we've got now is probably early February. If we don't see anything specifically cold in mid to early February, the chances are starting to reduce, because the peak time for snow for widespread areas is sort of end of December until sort of middle of February, at least for major snow events. Of course, we can see snow end of February, early March, but especially for low-lying areas and areas in the south where the sun is starting to increase in intensity, longer days, that's where snowfall gets harder to be significant and to sort of settle. We could see, of course, falling snow all the way into April, May, but settling snow, especially in the south, starts to diminish probably from the end of February, early March. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Make sure you keep up to date with the forecasters. It does look like there's going to be a lot of chop and changing over the next week or two, but I'll see you again for another video soon.